प्रिय एंड प्यारे बच्चों, dear students, in the introductory class of this chapter tissues yesterday, your active participation and answering of my questions based on this particular chapter tissues or this particular term tissues had made me firmly convinced that now you have a pictorial view or a good perception about this particular term tissues or this particular chapter tissues and its role and importance in the life of a living organism. As a living organism has to survive and exist, so there are a number of functions which a living organism has to perform in the external environment as well as in their internal environment. That means in their internal body parts. So those functions are being performed by different organs, and the organs are itself made by the certain tissues which are a group of certain cells. So students, if we have a huge task to accomplish, that means in English we used to say if we have a Herculean task to accomplish, so there's a requirement of a huge amount of energy as well as a more number of people. So similarly in the human body, there are a number of functions which has to be performed by a living organism. It might be a plant, a human or an animal. So every organism has to perform different kinds of functions for its existence and survival. So there are some organisms like unicellular organisms which perform all their functions with the help of a single cell, whereas there are multicellular organisms which perform their function with the help of a group of cells. So as there are large number of functions, so these group of cells which is similar in structure and works together to perform a specific function is termed as tissues. So why there is a need of a tissue or a group of cells? Because there are more number of functions. I am repeating this term again and again so that it should be deeply embedded in your mind that when there are a number of functions and the body is a bit complex, so there are a more number of cells as well as there are more number of tissues also. So similarly we can understand this case with the example of a plant tissue and an animal tissue. So you can say, see, there are various number of tissues in the case of an animal as well as there are some number of tissues in the case of plants. But the body of a plant is not a bit complex as compared to the body of an animal. So because the body of an animal is much more complex, so it has a more number of tissues like muscle tissues, nervous tissue, connective tissue and epithelial tissue. So students, let's understand it. So we consider this human brain, spinal cord and nerves totally comprise the nervous system, and the signals or the messages which are being transferred by the brain with the help of the spinal cord and the nerves to the different body parts to respond to the stimuli, such actions is being done by the help of the nervous tissue with the help of the cells named as neurons. Whereas there are some tissues which help in the movement of the skeleton, or they connect different bones to certain muscles. So such tissues are known as the connective tissue. Like blood is also a connective tissue which carries the oxygen, hormones and various proteins from different body parts to all the different body parts. So these are the certain connective tissues like tendons which connects the bone to muscles. Similarly, there are bones which give a skeletal support to the whole body structure. So in similar lines, if we understand, there are certain types of tissues which are named as muscle tissues in the body of a human body. So we know that the heart used to pump the blood to the whole body part and transfers the deoxygenated blood back to the lungs. So in this way, such action of the pumping action is being done with the help of the cardiac muscle tissue. That is a muscular tissue. If we have to walk or run or we have to blink our eyes, so there are some tissues which are named as the skeletal tissue which acts as a voluntary tissue which is under the control of the particular human being. Similarly, the smooth muscle tissues are present in the iris of the eye, and even it is present in the alimentary canal of the urinary bladder, so which helps in the transport of food from the esophagus to the stomach. So in this way, there are some muscle tissues which are helping in the movement and action of different body parts, different organs in the body of a human being. Similarly, the epithelial tissues are the tissues which help in the secretion, excretion, and even the protection of the underlying tissues. So it has been marked in this case in the intestine. So in the intestine, a basic function of epithelial tissue is to absorb the nutrients and help in the digestion of the food, and even protect the underlying tissues from any kind of damage or pathogens. So in this case, students, we understand there are various kinds of tissue which are present in the animals. So we understand in this way that there are a group of cells which form a tissue in the case of animals, and those tissues are performing a specific function. So these specific functions are performed by certain tissues in the case of animals as well as certain plants. So if we take the example of the plant tissue, so in the case of a plant tissue, there are certain tissues like dermal tissue system, ground tissue system, and the vascular tissue system. So this marked, in this case, it is marked as the it is stem. Stem contains the dermal. Dermal is the outer layer or the covering which protects the plant from any kinds of escape of water or the transpiration, as well as from the any kind of pathogens. So the dermal tissue system is like the epidermis, which is the outer skin of the plant. So the ground tissues are the one which help in the storage and help us to give the support to the plant, and there are certain examples like parenchyma, collenchyma, and sclerenchyma are certain kinds of ground tissue system. And if we consider the plant has to transport certain kind of food and water to different body parts. So this is being done with the help of the vascular tissue system, with the help of the xylem and phloem tissues in the case of vascular tissue system. So there are various functions which the plant has to perform, like transport of food and minerals and water to different parts of the plant, as well as it has to protect the plant from any kind of pathogens or water loss. Similarly, the ground tissue system helps in the storage of food which has been produced by the leaf parts of the chlorophyll by the process of photosynthesis is being done by the plant tissues. So, by understanding the various kinds of functions by the animals and plant tissues, we can easily understand the basic difference between the plant tissue and animal tissue. So, we understand that the food is directly prepared by the plants by the process of photosynthesis. So, they are known as the autotrophic in nature, whereas animals have to depend on the plants for the survival. That is why they are known as the heterotrophs, and based on that, because they are heterotrophs, they have to move from one place to another for the search of food, mate, and shelter. That is why they perform movement, whereas the plants are stationary because they do not require any kind of food from the or dependency on any other organism for their survival. So in this way, the plants are stationary, so they have to face various kinds of hazards and disasters. For that purpose, the plants have provided certain kind of supportive tissues which help to protect the plant from such disasters and give us support and mechanical strength to the plant, and in that way the plants require very less energy, whereas the animals has to move from one place to another, so they require certain tissues which provide more energy, and those tissues are mostly the living tissues, whereas the plants contain most of the dead tissues or the dead cells. So in this way, the plants grow throughout their life, whereas animals grow during that period of attaining maturity, do not grow after attaining maturity. So in this way, the animals do not have any such dividing or non-dividing regions. So the growth in the case of animals is uniform, whereas in the case of plants, the growth is not uniform. It is localized to certain regions like leaf parts, nodes, internodes, and girth. So in this way, the plant tissues contain some arithmetic tissue we keep on dividing throughout their life. And as we know, as I explained to you just now, the body of the animals are a bit complex. That is why they contain more number of tissues, whereas in the case of the body of plants are a bit less complex. So they have a less body organization, and they have contains a few number of tissues, so that their functions can be easily performed, like transportation of food, water, and protection of the plant from any kind of damage or pathogens or water loss. So students, we are able to understand that the cells cannot perform all the functions in the case of a complex living organisms, so they have to be grouped into certain groups. So such groups is known as the tissues, and when the tissues together perform a specific function in the body, they form an organ. It might be skin, kidney, heart, brain, liver, or stomach. And when many organs work together to complete a complete task with efficiency and form an organ system, Such system of organs is known as the organ system. It might be a digestive system, respiratory system in animals, root system or shoot system in plants. And if all the organs are working properly and with good coordination, and complete organism as a whole is being created, and a whole organism can be perform all the activities, it is free to do whatever karma he wants. So by that purpose he can lead a very good life by performing all the functions properly in his body by proper discipline and proper activity. So students, I think you have a basic idea about the difference between plant and animal tissues, and what about the real organization of the certain tissues from cells, tissues, organs, organ system, and total organism. Okay students, so we have to become a good organism and lead a very good life. Thank you students, thank you very much.